With Karding being the third super typhoon to hit the country this year, more people now look at environment-friendly options to help stave off the effects of climate change. And one is adopting a renewable power system. But how easy would the transition be? Let's speak now with Wartsila Energy Vice President Frederic Carron, joining us now from Singapore. Thank you so much for joining us, Frederic. We just heard a climate reality campaigner earlier. We are having a climate change catastrophe here in the Philippines with so many typhoons year in and year out, and this is because of our fossil fuel footprint. As we continue to face this problem, in your view, has the country been able to ramp up its energy mix, including renewable energy capacity?
Good evening, Rico. Thanks for having me. You are definitely right. We are just witnessing the intensifying effects of climate change. In this respect, I think it's very important that countries set very strong targets in terms of decarbonization. And at Wartsila, what we have done lately is we have released a report called Rethinking Energy in Southeast Asia. And in this report, we are modeling power systems. We are modeling power systems of 3 countries, Vietnam, Indonesia, but also Philippines, and with a special look at the island of Luzon. The good news is, according to our modeling, we will be able to reach net zero in the Philippines at least by 2050.
2050? Okay, that's about
yes.
28 years from now.
Correct, but we need to act now, and this is very important. And what we mean by acting now is there are some common steps that most countries need to take. The first one is, you said it right, is massive addition of renewable energy in the system.
I just wanted to add, Frederic.
Yes.
I just wanted to add, Frederic, because a report has identified 7.1 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity in the country. Over half is from hydropower. Other sources are solar energy and wind. Is this sufficient in the path towards net zero by 2050?
What we are calculating in the report is that this is not sufficient. The current target for the Philippines is to have 35% of renewable energy by 2030 and 50% by 2040. According to our report, we see that the current power development plan is falling short on both these targets by at least a 10% margin. So it means that we need to accelerate the introduction of renewable. And also, very importantly, something which is currently missing from the power development plan is you need to introduce balancing capacity to take care of the intermittency of the renewable energy. That's the only way you can keep the system at low cost, but also reliable and diminish your carbon emission. So the planning of this additional new renewable plus the flexibility in the system is important. Flexibility that you can get from energy storage, but also from specific thermal balancing plant, which will have a very low capacity factor.
And Frederic, the Philippines is rich in natural resources, ideal for renewable energy. So the country and the government has to use this to our advantage.
I think very clearly we see that Philippines is actually in a very good position. You have multiple sources of renewable energy. You have hydro, you mentioned it. You have geothermal to some extent. But what we see is going to be needed is a massive introduction of further renewables, solar and wind. The rest will be balancing capacity. And by 2050, we think that in the Philippines it will be possible to have 87% of the electricity generated from renewable. So it's possible, but it will take massive investment right now. Having said that, the cost of electricity, if you average it on the lifetime of the assets, is going to be much lower than what it is now. We even calculate that it will be 20% cheaper having a fully net zero compliant system than a system which is still having a lot of coal-fired plant or combined cycle.
Yeah, because Frederic, solar energy only makes up about 427 megawatts, but with a significant pipeline of projects approved or under development, this year it is expected to rise to about 3 gigawatts. As for wind, it only makes up about 427 megawatts, but its potential is up to 76 gigawatts. Do you think that we can see additional investments in the solar and wind? And will it make investment sense?
I feel there is already a good framework to introduce renewables like solar and wind, but we need much more capacity than what you just said if we want to reach at least the target set by the Filipino government. And if we want to reach the net zero by 2050, it's going to be much more than that. But it's also important, as I was mentioning, not to forget the reliability side of the system. Mm-hmm. And it's important to add also flexible assets that will do the balancing of the renewable. If you don't have that, you will be limited to a certain amount of renewable. And we see curtailment, as we have seen in other countries, in some cases, in some provinces of China, in some places in Vietnam, where there was a good intention to introduce more solar, but at some point, because the flexibility in the system was not planned in advance, there's some curtailment had to happen.
Thank you so much, Frederic, for your insights on renewable energy and how important it is for the Philippines. Wartsila Energy Vice President Frederic Carron joining us from Singapore.